Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Jordan Webster, and I'm with the Kansas City Home Builders Association. And I am also, and we are members of the Northland Education Business Alliance, or NEBA for short. NEBA is a network of education and business organizations in Clay and Platte counties, where our vision is to promote and provide business-driven educational opportunities for you, our new next generation of business leaders. I will be your host during the session, and I'm also joined by an additional NEBA member, Courtney Reyes, who's also part of the Kansas City Home Builders Association. Just a few quick notes before we get started. This session will run for 40 minutes with a hard stop at 11:40. Our industry expert will begin by sharing his professional history and insight, but we want to definitely make this more of a conversation. So at the bottom of your screen, you will see an option to use the Q&A feature, and we encourage you to use that to post any questions you might have throughout the session. You do not have to wait till the end, so interject anytime, and we'll do our best to answer each and every question. When the session ends, you'll be asked to take a very short survey, and please give us your feedback on this event so we can get better at hosting things at this format in the future. Last but not least, the session will be recorded and available online probably towards the end of the day. So let's get started. Mark, the floor is yours.
Very good. Thank you very much. And good morning, everybody. First of all, let me commend you for, I don't know if you are given leeway from coursework to do this or if you're doing it on your own accord, but regardless, I commend you for taking part of these sorts of things to learn and explore individually. So I'm Mark Stewart. I serve as the president and CEO of an organization called Agriculture Future of America. We're headquartered here in Kansas City, but we work nationally with primarily college students and young professionals that are either pursuing careers in food and agriculture, or if they're young professionals, they're working in the industry in some form or fashion. The core of what we do is really three things. What I'm going to call soft skill development, and I'll talk about that a little bit more here in a moment. So think non-technical skills. You guys are exploring all sorts of technical skills. This is sort of the softer side. How do you communicate well? How do you build your network? How do you explore career paths? Those sorts of things. So we do soft skill development. We help with building your professional network. So peers, certainly within your community, but also nationally in an industry sector that can help you down the road. So building a network with peers as well as professionals from industry. And then thirdly, helping you explore career paths. And so again, this is in our wheelhouse. I love that you all are taking the initiative to explore different pathways and really try to align some of your interests with where you may go in the future. So I'm just going to tell you a quick story just about me personally, how I got to where I am. And so yes, would encourage you to go ahead and ask questions as something comes to mind. You won't interrupt me, and I want to make sure we get those addressed. And I will just tell you from the start, I've worked both in nonprofit as well. And we're still a nonprofit, but I also have a pretty good insight into the agricultural space as well. So if somebody wanted to explore a couple of those different pathways, touch on nonprofit versus agriculture, either of those are fair game. So I'll start off by saying, basically, my career path has been a series of opportunities that I did not get. In other words, I wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't got turned down or turned away from many opportunities. So I'll leave you with a few tidbits at the end, but one of those is don't be discouraged, especially you're young now. You don't have to have it all figured out. But again, why things are like this are so important. They kind of broaden your perspectives and open your eyes to things that are out there. And it's up to you to try to figure out where your interests are, maybe where some of your skills are, and then explore career pathways that might align with some of those interests and skills. And so again, these things are wonderful. Nothing like this existed when I was in high school. I ended up getting a bachelor's degree at Northwest Missouri State University, right up the road from Kansas City. I didn't know much about the university. I was actually recruited to play football, and that was the genesis for me deciding to go there. And I'll tell you, I went undecided in a major. I had no idea what I was going to study. Stumbled into studying corporate wellness and parks and rec management because I thought it would be fun. I enjoyed sports and activities. Found out there are no jobs. They don't pay well. again, got turned down for many opportunities and stumbled my way into a master's degree program and working for the university in their institutional advancement office. So basically raising money. And again, nothing that I ever thought that I would be doing, but in the best ways probably led to many of my opportunities, because in the nonprofit space, you may or may not know this, but you have to generate money to do what you do. And so having a skill like and some expertise in fundraising is quite a skill set to be able to have. Stumbled again into a doctorate program in educational leadership, because at that time I thought I wanted to lead an advancement office in higher education. And so it did align with some of my career aspirations and interests. And then life just threw a series of curveballs. People, as you build your network, you have doors open to you that you can either choose to take or turn down. I ended up going to work for my mentor at a private institution, Avali University, which is in the south part of Kansas City. About 7 months into that journey, another prior supervisor of mine called me and said that a consulting firm, a fundraising consulting firm, had just signed the Pro Football Hall of Fame as a client. And so I spent a year, I thought that was a dream job as a football player, traveling to Canton, Ohio, and running a fundraising campaign for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. That was probably the most miserable year of my life, but again, lessons learned. And then I stumbled back here into Kansas City, worked for a social service organization called the Don Bosco Centers in the heart of downtown Kansas City. Did everything from youth development up to senior center, again, primarily in a fundraising and a communications role. And then, as luck would have it and chance, got connected to my predecessor, who was looking for somebody to help raise money for this AFA organization. I didn't grow up in agriculture. I wasn't sure that would interest me, quite frankly. And again, I really thought I was going to get back into higher education. And so the funny thing about it is, here I am almost 10 years later, and now I'm the president and CEO of the organization, and it's the best job I've ever had. And it's always, again, it's a series of circumstances that doors closed, someone sought me out because of I'd done a good job for them in the past. Again, back to that networking and just always excelling at whatever you're doing. And so that's my professional history is very wide and varied, but mostly in that nonprofit sort of space, and a lot of it rooted in fundraising. So today I'm obviously with the AFA organization. We work and primarily are supported by industry. So I have a glimpse into basically every aspect of the food and ag sector of our broad industry. And I mentioned I did not grow up on a farm. That's pretty common today. There are just less farms and more young people that are growing up on farms. It's not a big deal, and most companies aren't even all that concerned about it because they understand that trend. It's more about getting top talent who have a passion for, feeding, clothing, fueling the world. And if you really care about values, I don't know that you'll find an industry that's much more value centered, because what can be more meaningful than growing or preparing or researching in the space to create food and grow food and, again, materials like clothing and fuel and all those sorts of things. So it's one of the biggest industries that often gets overlooked because we take things like that for granted. So nevertheless, it's the Kansas City metro area has a humongous footprint of agribusiness, again, maybe often overlooked. Everything from breed associations, so think like Angus Association, the American Hereford Association, Charlet. These are all breed associations in the animal health space. There's an entire animal health corridor ecosystem, basically trying to attract global animal health companies into this corridor. To grain traders like Archer Daniels Midland or ADM, the Andersons, they're all trading grain globally in different markets. To, again, various associations like the American Royal Association, which hosts all sorts of events and education, to folks like the National Crop Insurance Agency, which is headquartered here in Kansas City. So there's a ton of opportunities just here in Kansas City, but we even get a glimpse of the need more nationally. I'll maybe transition here real quick. And again, I'm not doing a very good job. Tanner asked if I grew up on a farm or a background. So I've highlighted that. Again, the beauty of it is you can find a passion in this industry without having to have that background. And again, it's more and more common. I grew up in Springfield, Missouri, and my wife grew up in Southeast Nebraska. So she was a farm girl. Honestly, I'd never stepped really foot on a farm until college. I've been in a combine. I've not driven one. I have driven the grain cart during harvest and helped my father-in-law work his calves and give vaccinations and things I never thought I would be doing. But it's not unlike what you all are doing here. So no matter your background, how you grew up, or where your interest is, if you find things that you want to explore, this type of thing that you're doing here and the programs like Northland CAPS and Northland Career Center, find ways to get your hands on or involved in whatever it is that you're interested in. That's the best way for you to learn. Again, we work in the college space, so predominantly we're working with college students and we're helping them find internships. I can't implore you to do anything more than go find experience. I commend you for doing that in high school. Keep it going, because that's the best way for you to figure out what you like, and more importantly, what you don't like. Again, that whole notion of trying to find your skills and interests and match it with opportunities in the industry, the best way to do it is to go get experience. And not many companies are going to turn it away. Sometimes you can be as creative as to try to promote your own opportunity. So if there's a company or an organization that you really want to work with, trying to leverage your network to get in and explore, do they have internships? Do they have a study program that you could be a part of? Could you do some part-time work in the evenings? And the most ambitious young people even go so far as to try to dream or create an opportunity and sell yourself and again, find ways to get experience. So an anonymous attendee asked if there are disadvantages to not being born on a farm. I suppose from a disadvantage perspective, all you'd be talking about is you have a learning curve that you have to make up. In other words, if you grew up on a farm, you're just generally going to have some exposure into the industry that someone like myself didn't have. I'm here to tell you, if I can be successful in the job that I have today, and you're always curious and willing to learn, you can overcome any learning curve. So don't let that hang you up. Again, it's more about, do you have a passion for feeding and clothing the world, fueling the world? Are you interested enough to try to explore different career paths? And I'm going to give you some examples for how you can do that. And are you willing to learn? If all those answers are true, then there's no disadvantage to having not grown up on a farm. Kyler asked how long I've been doing this job. So Kyler, I've been in this job as president and CEO for a little over 3 years. I've been with the organization almost 10. So again, I was hired primarily to handle our partnerships, which is basically going to big companies, asking them for money to support the programs that we do. And then our program team would carry out the programs, and then we try to connect college students with employers, again, to talk about jobs, to explore internships. It can go beyond corporations. It can go into associations and nonprofits. It can go into graduate level programs for those that might be interested in a post-secondary degree. So we have programs that like that come to promote to college students. I will tell you, the world is changing. And so I want to make sure I make this point. Just because I got a college degree and maybe your parents talk to you about that does not mean there are not profound opportunities out there that don't require a 4-year degree from an institution. Again, part of why I commend you for the types of things that you're doing here and the types of programs that you're involved in is there's all sorts of ways for high school students to get technical experience and on-job training, more so than ever before, and definitely that I ever remember. I don't believe I ever had exposure like that when I was in high school. Take advantage of those. And again, be as critical in that process. You don't have to have it all figured out. Don't get frustrated by trying to figure out what you want to do and how you try to get that experience, because that'll consume you. Just go find experiences that you think you would have an interest in learning more about, And then probably the more important part, excel in whatever you do. And if you do that, you will be surprised how many opportunities will open to you. And the more experiences you get, the more you'll get exposed to the things that you like. Again, I'm not doing anything that I ever anticipated I would be doing when I went to college, let alone before I went to college. Don't get hung up on that. Just continue to follow your passions. Hopefully you've got some good personal values that you want to live by. Be true to those and continue to be curious and look for opportunities, and good things will come your way. Jordan, if you don't mind, you just want me to keep rambling? Is that okay?
Sure, you can say whatever you
Okay.
want, or if
Okay.
you want me to supply you with some specific questions, I'm happy to do so as well.
I'm good, and I'll answer questions as they come in. Catch me if I'm not paying attention to one, and I want to give the students some things to take a look at as well, some resources that I think will be helpful. So before I go there, Kyler also asked best internship for someone who has no experience with farming. Well, Kyler, I'd put it back on you, and maybe you can type another comment here. What is it that you would want to do? And maybe hold that. Let me talk about some things that I see that are real needs out there. And if you want to chime back in with a comment, I'm happy to address it specifically. So without knowing the audience, how many of you have sort of an ag upbringing or experience? Again, not relevant, but forgive me if I'm redundant on some of these things, but I'm going to start with agriculture is not just farming. Okay, so this industry is much more broad and diverse than most young people ever think. And I can't tell you the number of times I've heard from college students, I had no idea that opportunity existed, or that company existed, or that was even a thing. And so I'll give you some examples. So even if you're interested in the sciences, basically you could find a really meaningful and lucrative career in food science, in equipment science and engineering, in seed or chemical science, animal science. So I mentioned the animal health corridor. There's a lot of companies that are gravitating here trying to figure out how to solve problems. There's a big event that they put on every fall that basically highlights entrepreneurs that are trying to find new and innovative products to bring into the animal health space. So for instance, Fitbit for cows. Basically, they're electronic monitoring systems that can be implanted into animals to detect the health of the animal, so that a farmer has all this data about his herd and never has to, I mean, they'll still step foot on the farm, but they can monitor all this from afar and know when something is wrong with one of their animals and go address it immediately. So there's all sorts of technology and science that can go into any of these sectors. You've heard probably about unmanned aircraft or drones. They're being used in all sorts of ways in the crop space to monitor fields, to understand where there may be issues relative to deficient nutrients in the soil, to just monitoring damage. I mean, they've got a million applications. And so the companies are looking for people that can be certified to fly drones. It helps in the crop space to have some sort of an agronomy degree or exposure, because you got to understand and appreciate what you're looking at. Ultimately, you're going to work with farm consultants or the farmers themselves to come up with strategies. So again, you may have a tech interest or a science interest, apply it to a specific sector of the industry, like in the crop space, and then help farmers be more productive in what they're doing. So there's plenty to do there. From an equipment perspective, certainly if you've seen any equipment around in the rural areas, there are humongous machines, combines that are have 24 row heads on it, basically, that do all the planting, all the harvesting, can drive themselves. Again, all these companies have technology to have self-driving tractors. That's the way things have been going: bigger, faster, more autonomous. But today, I just was a part of our national conference was last week, and a company called AGCO, which is out of Georgia, they're doing now basically micro tractors. These are these little tiny tractors that they're experimenting with that go through the field and plant on their own, and they're completely autonomous. So you basically can send hundreds of them out, as opposed to one big machine that's got to have some, at least a person in it. So all sorts of opportunities in science relative to equipment. I mentioned seed and chemical. There's more and more interest in the environment and how we're taking care of the soil and how much water we're using. And so there's tons of science and innovation and technology that goes into the seed and the chemicals that are used to help those plants grow and be productive. So whether it's trying to grow more with less or just being making sure that plants are resistant to crops and weather and all those sorts of things that are variables that farmers can't control. So there's just a ton of opportunities, and that's just kind of, I was really more talking about more of the science opportunities. I'll answer a couple more questions here. So Tanner's asking for animal science, working with livestock, and interested in the animal science department. So yeah, so there's plenty of opportunities. Again, there are organizations that have, and again, without knowing geography and whether you want to stay in Kansas City or not, but basically all of the big breed associations are here. You may not work hand in hand with livestock unless you get involved in their marketing and their showing and their trade markets. But those are opportunities that you could do where you basically would travel around on behalf of associations to meet with farmers and help them find markets for their cattle or their livestock. There are organizations that are in the animal protein business that are headquartered here in Kansas City. So you've got some very large ones, like Seaboard is located here in Kansas City, which is one of the largest private companies in the city. They're primarily in the pork space, but they have partnerships with basically growers. There is a plant in St. Joseph, Missouri called Triumph Foods that's a processing facility. So they've got farmers that they have agreements with that'll bring in hogs. They'll go through the process to be harvested all the way through the finished product. And then Seaboard is involved in the marketing of it all, basically selling the product, finding places to get it to consumers, et cetera. There's companies like that. Smithfield Foods is headquartered here in Kansas City. Not headquartered, I'm sorry. They've got an operation here in Kansas City. They're headquartered out of Virginia. But they work in the animal protein space as well, all the way down to, again, you probably know them from, their bacon or whatever. So there are all sorts of opportunities like that. It's just a matter of trying to get it in and get some connections. If you do go to college and you're in an animal science program, generally speaking, there's going to be on-campus farms. It depends on the type of institution, but I'll give you an example. My alma mater, Northwest Missouri, has a farm that they operate. And so the animal science department is in charge of handling all the livestock, growing the crops, taking care of, and that's their hands-on experience. But in addition to that, it opens some doors to all sorts of other opportunities. And that can take you all the way to the other end of the spectrum, which is working for companies like a Merck or an Elanco or a Zoetis that are in the pharmaceutical space, everything from companion animal all the way up to livestock and food animal pharmaceuticals, basically animal well-being products. And Merck is headquartered in DeSoto, Kansas, just west of the city. Elanco and Zoetis have a presence all over the country, but a little bit of a presence here. So plenty of opportunities in the animal science space. Another anonymous question, would you suggest going to college before taking over a farm or a farm industry? Boy, that's a big one. That's up to you and your family. Most of the time, what I hear from college students is that if they have an opportunity to go back to the farm, their parents are encouraging them to go out and get some education, maybe even encouraging them to go out and get some industry experience before coming back. That's a family decision and a family dynamic that I would encourage you to take up with your relatives, because there's obviously a cost incurred and debt perhaps could come with that. Those are things that are personal choices that you need to consider. Some of it may be timing. So some of it may come down to if you have siblings and how many family members are involved in the operation. And at the end of the day, you all have to make ends meet. So you have to be able to make a living. So it's a complicated question. Those are all things that I would say your family really needs to discuss before you make a decision on college. But any experience is good experience, especially off the farm, because it's just practical knowledge that you can bring back to what you're doing. So even if you knew this job is waiting here for me, anytime you can go out and get experience that's real life and applicable, you bring it back to your job, it's always going to bring, it's going to be valuable because you're just going to bring outside experience and perspective. So just a general thought. Mackenzie asked about environmentally friendly agriculture. So I'll address it how I think you may mean. There is obviously just a growing interest in the environment, the use of resources, natural and otherwise, but especially natural. There is a growing movement from industry, whether it be dictated by food companies saying, we want you to have a zero carbon footprint, or we want you to use antibiotic free thing. You know, most of that is driven by consumer choice. I say that to say most consumers aren't very educated about the food system and the agriculture system in general. So for example, when you hear things that are antibiotic free, there's never been antibiotics in food. Like the FDA regulates it in such a way that if there were trace amounts of antibiotics in the finished protein, it would never make it to the store shelves. So it's really never been an issue. But if a consumer has a perception about something like that, I don't want antibiotics used on my animals, and therefore I don't want it in my food. A grower may go out and raise animals, not use antibiotics. Again, there's going to have health issues because we all perhaps use antibiotics when we get sick. Most farmers are really prudent about that. All those things cost money, but if there's a consumer choice, there's generally going to be a market to help identify some of those things. So all that to say, there's just a growing interest and desire for things that are environmentally friendly. Again, I mentioned before water use. I mentioned soil health, which is probably the biggest thing that's out there right now in terms of there's so much that we don't know about the soil. That has nothing to do with the water or the chemicals or anything else that we might put on crops. And so all of those things, if they interest you, are wonderful opportunities for you to explore a career path. Before I keep rambling too long, I want to make sure I reference a resource. For those of you that are really interested in exploring career paths, I'm going to tell you about a website that I'd encourage you to go to. I think if you just Google Ag Explorer, I think it should get you there. It's basically an FFA and an agcareers.com resource. And what they've done is they've whittled career paths down into different segments of the industry. And this environment question just got me on it because, for instance, I went into environmental service systems and I looked at a job of an ecologist. It'll describe what an ecologist does. This is generalizations, the responsibilities you may have. It gives you a future job market outlook. It even tells you what an average annual full-time salary could be. It can link you to job postings that may or may not be of interest to you. It links you to potential colleges and universities with degrees. And you could play and get lost in that website for hours if you just wanted to explore all sorts of jobs in the ag space. And again, the environment one is a big one right now. The other thing I'll say about environment and this notion of sustainability is every company is focused on that in some form or fashion. There's even an organization called Field to Market, which is basically a coalition of food and ag companies coming together to try to define sustainability because it means something different to everybody, and try to encourage or incentivize organizations to strive for sustainable practices. It's a big deal, and there's a lot of attention on it, so much so that there's growing jobs, predominantly in the public sector. So think of organizations like within the USDA or the Conservation Service, NRCS, the Forest Service, organizations like Ducks Unlimited or Quails Unlimited. These all have environment and conservation practices programs, and they work with farmers and they work with government agencies. There's a lot of jobs in the public sector through organizations like that. All right, Tanner, feedlot companies. Yes, so good question. So you got companies like JBS, like Cargill, that have these large feedlot operations. It depends again what your hands-on reference means, but they're all looking for people to work in operations. That's probably one of the biggest job opportunities out there, whether it's I want to work in operations for a grain company that, has a milling site, making flour or whatever, to operations, for a food company working a line that's making consumer products, to, operations like a large livestock or a feedlot. Again, there's plenty of companies that are out there. They're probably recruiting, young people from programs that have an interest in animal science and have a specific interest in working feedlots. There's probably a general knowledge or appreciation for managing, again, I'm saying operations, like understanding the feed process, understanding there's an economic factor to it. How much are you paying for grain, and how are you building the business model to it? Yes, you'll be hands-on, but if you wanted to work your way up into managing a feedlot, those are the types of skills that you'd want to get. Some business acumen, some understanding about economics, probably an appreciation for the trade market, because at the end of the day, there's got to be a market for things if you're going to be profitable. And some of the companies like JBS, Swift, like Cargill, have big feedlot operations, and many of them are nearby. There's quite a few in Kansas. How old should you be to start running your own farm? Well, that's a good question. I don't know that I have a great answer. Lots of variables. It depends on if you grew up around your parents or whomever running a farm, how much of that acumen, some of that knowledge that you gained. It's a extremely risky business. Again, variables that you can't control, weather, trade markets. Look at this last year with the trade war with China in particular, and that had a profound impact on the markets for agricultural products. That can really hurt the agricultural community, and especially if you don't have an administration at the government that wants to support with supplemental payments. It's a really risky lifestyle, if you will, a job, career. So again, I don't know that I can give you an age. You just have to know a lot about a lot of those things, and you're basically an entrepreneur doing your own thing. And there's heavy capital costs that go into it when you think about the equipment, places to store either animal or grain, all sorts of factors that go into it. All right, Tanner, we're getting closer. So working rodeos, working cattle, I guess my best guess would be, the American Royal Association would be a perfect organization right here in Kansas City to try to get connected with. I believe they have internships just about all around the year. Now, many of their shows, unfortunately, had to get canceled, but I know they just did 2 weeks worth of livestock auctions, which you could volunteer or intern for. They have scholarships that provide you access to everything the organization does. They do run rodeos, they do horse shows, they do all sorts of things. So that would be my best reference for you there, is to reach out. Tanner, and Jordan, I don't know if you're going to be able to give my contact information to folks. If so, I guess I can just probably chat it in myself. Tanner, I'm happy to connect you with someone that could get you headed in the right direction. So would talking FFA education help for the future, even with farm experience? I'm not sure I totally understand the question. If you're asking if exploring ag education in general, will it help you in the future? If I'm understanding correctly, ag education is specific to, I want to work in a high school setting and teach people about all sorts of things agriculture. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of that in the Northland. The only FFA chapter is with I believe, in the most immediate Northland part of Kansas City, is with the Northland Career Center. And so most people that take or explore ag education are interested in teaching. That said, it can certainly give you a well-rounded background and experience with all things agriculture, and certainly could help with on-farm experience, but it's going to be pretty minimal. It's going to be kind of superficial. You're only going to get a little bit of exposure, because the intention, I think, with an ag educator is to be able to teach students a little bit about everything. Maybe, again, a little deeper subject knowledge in areas that they're most interested, but not sure if I totally hit that question on the nail, but I would like to leave you with a few things before we get kicked off. Again, commend you for doing these sorts of things. Find experience, however you can get it. Cherish the experience. I'm going to ask you to do one more thing. When you have experiences, find a way to reflect on them. I know that's not a tendency for a younger person. I certainly wasn't doing this in high school. It was even hard to pick up later on in college. Reflection is just the act of thinking. So what experience did I have? What did I like about it? What did I not? What skills did I learn that I'm really good at, or they get me energized? What things did I have to do that I really hated? Go through those exercises, and it's, again, probably more applicable to life experiences that you have, because it's going to help you. The more you do that, the more it's going to help you create some focus around, again, where your skills and strengths are, where your interests are. If you want to have a happy life, that's what you got to do. You got to match a job or a career with the things that you like and enjoy doing. And the best way to start to do that now is to start to think about what you're good at, what you like to do. I would encourage you all to find ways to sharpen your what I call soft skills. Again, yes, technical skills are great, whether you want to learn about animal science or get involved in engineering, all things that you can use in the ag space. But think about how to be an effective communicator. How do I, shake somebody's hand and carry on a conversation with them? Because when you get into job interviews, those are the types of things that can really set you apart. Even so far as to understand body language and what it means in a job interview setting or things like that. Leverage your network. So when you meet people, leverage that relationship in a way that's meaningful. Don't let it be superficial. Don't connect with them on social media just to say you have another connection. Remember something about them. If something reminds you of them, send them a note and say, hey, this made me think of you. That type of thing, where you develop meaningful relationships, because you never know how those are going to play out. When you get into jobs and experiences, excel at what you do, and make sure you leverage those relationships and tell them how much it meant to work for them or whatever. So I think the final thing is just don't worry. I don't know that any of you are worried, but you're not going to have it all figured out now. That's what life is all about. You'll figure it out. You're going to have plans and think you're going to do some things. I'm here to tell you, most of the time it doesn't happen that way. It didn't for me. Things are going to be fine. But if you do these things, like hone your soft skills, develop your network, think about your skills and strengths in a reflective sort of way, those things are going to take you far. And again, there's so much opportunity in the agriculture space, no matter what your interests are. And I'd be hard pressed to say you're going to find any more meaningful career industry to be in than agriculture. So, Robin or Jordan, I'm sorry, cut me off if I need to. I know there's.
No, I know this has been awesome. It's been awesome and lots of participation, which is good. Unfortunately, we are out of time. But I would encourage your contact information might be on your website too, if anybody wanted to email you with any further questions.
Yep, that is right. agfuture.org is our website, and you just hover over about AFA and you'll get to us. And yes, you can reach out to me, or if you've got a LinkedIn account, I'm not sure that you guys are started in that world yet, but you could always connect with me there and send me a note. Best colleges, every institution in Missouri has some related ag programs. There's some small ones. I mentioned Northwest, Southeast, Missouri State, University of Missouri, Kansas State. There's plenty of options around here for great schools with agriculture programs.
Perfect.
So.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Mark. I really appreciate it. And I know the kids do too. And I hope everyone in the audience, I hope you guys enjoyed it, hearing about these specific career opportunities in the Kansas City area. Please make sure and take a couple minutes to fill out the survey link that will pop up on your screen as soon as I end the session. That will help us improve this event for the future. And any additional information on the topics you've heard about today is on NEBA's website, which is nebaworkskc.org. So thank you, everyone. I hope you have a great rest of the day.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Bye.